As we have learned, class, data are usually collected in a raw form or raw format. Therefore, it is difficult for us to understand the information that we are trying to get. Therefore, this raw data needs to be summarized, processed, and analyzed. However, class, no matter how well manipulated the information is, okay, this information should be presented in an effective format. Otherwise, we authors or we researchers will lost the information that we are trying to convey, especially to our readers. So in this topic class, we will be discussing the techniques on how the data and information will be presented, and these methods are textual, tabular, and graphical. Now, text class or textual is the common method, especially for explaining the findings, outlining trends, and providing contextual information. While this table, it is best suited, especially if we are trying to represent individual information and if we are trying to represent both quantitative and qualitative information. While a graph, it is a very effective tool, especially if we are trying to display data at first glance, and also it facilitates comparison and it reveals trends and relationships within the data. Let's say, for example, if it changes over time, or maybe in a frequency distribution, or maybe a correlation, or it could be a share or a whole. So these methods, class, textual, tabular, and graphical, are used to present data and information in a very powerful communication tools. So they make our article or maybe our report easily to understand, attract, and sustain the interest of the readers, especially if we are presenting large amounts of information, especially complex information. Also, editors and viewers at a glance, so they easily get the information. So if we use this visual displays, the important figures cannot be ignored. Now, data class, as we have learned, are set of facts. Okay, they provide partial reality of what really is the picture of that information. So whether our data that is being collected is used, okay, or maybe it could be questions regarding the information that we are trying to convey, how the data to be used, and what must be done to be included in that information must always be kept in mind. It's because most of the data, like we have mentioned, is already in or almost in raw format. That's why we have to derive the information from them. So before we start presenting the data, of course we have to plan on how we will present it. Okay, before you process the data itself, you have to plan. Should I put it in a table? Should I use graph to present this? So that's the first question that you must answer. Okay, the more detailed the question is, of course you have to also have a clearer result. Now, in the text class, okay, in the text here, this one, in the textual, this is the main method on how we convey information, and it is used especially if we are trying to explain. Take note, explain the result, or it could be trend, or it could be we are trying to provide contextual information, because class, from the term itself, you are using text or sentences. Okay, you are trying to narrate, narrative form. You are trying to tell, you are trying to explain something. Okay, it should be in narrative form. In this way, class, we are trying to explain findings and trying to outline trends there. So text, class, really provide interpretation, or if you are trying to emphasize a certain data. Let's say, for example, you are in a quantitative information. So if you are trying to convey, let's say, one or two numbers, so it is more appropriate to use written language than tables or graphs. Say, for example, class, this one. Yan. So from here, as you can see, we are trying to present two numbers, which is the 11% and 15%, as you can see here. Okay, see there, we have here, I am sorry, we have here 15% and 11%. So based on our presentation, okay, we have conveyed, or we have conveyed information which consists of two numbers, which is 11% and 15%. So you cannot do this, class, in tables, or rather in graph. Okay, you can only, or it is best way to present it in textual or in paragraph form. Okay, so that's an example of textual. Now, what if you use this? What if you try using this in a graph or maybe in a table? So if you use that, class, it would occupy large space, and it could be that your readers, they will not understand the data, because, class, in a graph, we don't put paragraph, right? Even in the table, we only use words and numbers, but since our data or information includes or consists of important things, so you really have to mention all of it, and you can only do it using textual. So if we are trying to convey more data, like we have said, so you have to use table, is more appropriate. Data, class, especially in this format, take longer to read, right? But that's the disadvantage. Have you experienced that when you open a newspaper? So there's lots of information, there's lots of figures, numbers. So you, reader, will sometimes feel boring or bored, because it takes too long to take the information or to take the data, right? And sometimes you just focus on the numbers. It's hard to take all of it. Sometimes, especially if the grammar, so it might convey different message. So it may also disadvantages in the readers. Baka iba yung pagkaintindi nila. Now, how about for the tabular? Tabular, class, or tables. Okay, so instead of sentences or paragraph, here we are using words or numbers, and it should be placed in rows and columns. Tables class have been used for almost 2,000 years already. So anyone, whatever your level of literacy, can easily understand the information, especially presented in tables. So tables class are appropriate if, for example, you are trying to present individual information, or if you are trying to present both quantitative and qualitative information. Like for example, class, let's say you are trying to present these physical methods or maybe functions. So you can use the table to present those methods or functions. Now, the advantage class of table is that they accurately present information that cannot be presented by a graph. When I say accurate, when it comes to the numbers, okay, what can you observe in graphs? When you use graphs or even charts, the percents are whole number, right? Let's say for example 20%, 25%, something like that. Or it could be there's decimal, but only let's say one decimal place. But of course that percent class is already rounded off. So you cannot present the accurate value in graph, but in table you can accurately express it. Like for example, the number 132.145852. If you use graph, you cannot present that fast. But in table, of course, you can freely write all the decimal. Another advantage class is that you can present different units together in a table. Like for example, class, you want to present simultaneously the blood pressure, the heart rate. Let's say for example, you're a nurse, you wanted to present the number of drugs administered, or maybe the anesthesia of that time, say for example. So you want to present that in one table. So it is possible. Unlike if you use by graph, you cannot present different labels or different categories in just one graph. Okay? So in table, you can do it simultaneously. So finally, tables are very useful in summarizing and comparing quantitative information in different variables. But then class, of course, if there's advantage, there's also disadvantages. When it comes to table, it takes longer time to interpret information. If you compare it to graph is very easy to comprehend. But when it comes to tables, so when you are trying to study data trends, so it's something not appropriate. Especially if you have long lists of numbers in your table, so the reader will not understand what is the information that you are trying to convey. Therefore, class, in table, sometimes the reader, of course, it's not easy for them to identify and select the information that is required. What really is that the information that you are trying to tell them. Okay, that's why we have a general guideline on how to create table. Okay, we have here characteristics of a good table, and this characteristics class should your table should have, very important, in order that the information that you really want to tell is complete. And some of the characteristics are it should have a heading, table number, table title, footnote, and there. Style, row caption, the block, field, line, cell, footnotes, source node. So the common here is the table number, of course. If you have scan books, the table number is always there. Like for example, table 1. And of course, aside from the table number, the table title, what is that table all about? Let's say for example, table 14. Let's say ages of accountancy students. Let's say for example, okay. And another common part here is this footnote and source note. So source note, obviously this is your, or this data or this part of the table shows the source of the data presented there in your table. So it could be that you've taken it from the internet, or maybe from the data that you have collected, or maybe from a book. So that is where you will place it. While the footnote is when you are trying to insert maybe a note, or it could be an article regarding that data. So footnote usually is, it could be an asterisk, or it could be a number or a letter, which is then defined below the table. So that's the common. But this other heading, head note, box head, so these are usually used. And in your lecture class, you can find it there, the positions of this box head, spanner head, and so on. Now, aside from this class, we also have the what we call heat maps. What is heat map? Heat maps class are used for better visualization, especially in tables. Heat maps help to further visualize the information that we are trying to present in the table. And how are we going to do it, these heat maps? By applying colors class to our background cells. Okay, we are applying colors. We can do that class by adjusting the colors, or maybe the color saturation of the information that is conveyed in our table. And by that, by changing the colors, we are, or the readers can quickly identify the information that we are trying to convey to them. So we can use the Excel, because Excel have features like that enables us to easily create heat maps, or color, or change the color of the background of the cell. Or you can also use the conditional formatting in the menu. So for example, as this one, we have here the comparison of a regular table and the table that uses heat map. This is a regular table. So the data presented is somewhat, the color or the background color are just the same. It doesn't have any specific focused things, something like that. But observe class this usage of a heat map. If you can observe, there are figures that are colored boldly, just like for example this one, this 90, this 36, this 78, and 68. So it could be that you are trying to tell the reader that the bold ones, okay, the colors in darker color is the one that you are trying to focus on, or the information that you are trying to convey. So see the difference, unlike this one where where you just present it plainly. Okay, so it's important, or it's better if you use the heat map so that the readers can easily understand it.